Welcome back to Kerbal's space program and our hunt for science. Money isn't a problem anymore, as refining the runway seems to be quite profitable. The goal for today is to gather as much science as possible from Duna and its moon Ike, and in order to do that, we need to know where the biomes and ore deposits on Ike and Duna are, so we're launching two satellites, one for Ike, one for Duna. This is actually the second launch, as the first pair had the wrong probe cores, but they all function as relays, so just causing some redundancy, so not really a big deal. So without further ado, let's put these in orbit of Duna and Ike. The last order of business within Kerbin's sphere of influence is gathering a little bit more science from Minmus with a final mission that'll help in the exploitation of Duna, after which I will be bringing back Bob and the other Kerbal that's on Minmus, which name I do not remember, as well as rescuing Jebediah from orbit of Kerbal, because he's been there for quite some time. Since Jeb's been waiting a long time, I decided he can wait a little longer, as I first want to launch a Duna research station. That way, while we save Jeb, and I think there's another Kerbal stuck around Kerbal right now, the Duna research station can continue transforming data into science. The other Kerbal that I mentioned was stuck around. Kerbal is Shipfrid, which was stationed at the Moon Station, and I tried to bring him back, but it turns out the amalgamation of ships there didn't quite have enough fuel to bring him all the way back, and the Moon eventually accelerated him into a solar orbit, and now we also have to save him as well as Jim. This is our first Duna lander, which I forgot to hit record, and now we're in the air already. So anyway, so it's just a small lander that'll land on Duna, grab some science as well as a surface sample, but later on I realized I made a mistake, as it will be landing without a kerbal, so it has a ore extractor surface sample gathering thing, but it's on the bottom stage, and I forgot to add a science container on the part that will be docking to the station, so we couldn't actually get the surface sample. We can only get all the other experiments. Okay, this is the first Ike lander, and I realized some design flaws when I was on Ike, as in I forgot the ore tanks. As you can see in the top right, there are no ore. So the idea was that it could land, refuel, fly to the next biome, get science, refuel, fly to the next, and then we only need one lander to gather all the science from Ike. But I forgot the ore tanks. The second one had ore tanks, and then I realized the puny drills are going to take a millennia to fill the ore tank up, so that refueling didn't work. I think I also crashed the second one into the Ike after trying to flip the orbit and not realizing how close to the moon I was in map view. And the third one, I think the third one actually managed to get there, gather science of one biome, and then dock with this one, which didn't have enough fuel to get to the station in orbit. Got the science from this one, and then it rendezvoused with the Duna research station and transferred all the science. Okay, this is the fourth Ike lander, and this one is a bit more advanced than the previous ones, as we actually have gathered enough science to start unlocking some of the more high-tech stuff. This one uses a nuclear engine, a plasma nuclear engine, I'm pretty sure. Okay, it's powered by a nuclear reactor, and it's a plasma engine, I think. Yes. And this one was actually able to land on quite a few biomes and then rendezvous with the Duna research station. So this kind of finished off all the slow and painful gathering of science around Ike. Okay, this is a creation that I am proud of, and it only costed like 4 million in development costs, aka they crashed whilst being tested. This is a space plane that will go to Duna, but not any space plane. It's antimatter powered, that's why it's so expensive. So the way it works is it has a large carbon dioxide or liquid carbon dioxide tank. It's got 4 air intakes, advanced air intakes, or weird ones that can take in carbon dioxide, and then we've got refrigeration stuff that turns it into liquid carbon dioxide that gets stored in the tanks, and then it gets run past the thermal antimatter reactor, and we get thrust out the back. And in Kerbal's atmosphere, it can use the normal air intakes because the engine can switch between different fuel types. It's also a VTOL, so I can easily land on Duna without the need of parachutes. They're there for an emergency, but it turned out I didn't need them. The only design flaw, as apparently all of my craft have one, is there's a small nuclear reactor in front of this wonderful Kerbal's cryopod, which I believe increased its heat so that I couldn't cryogenically freeze him for the majority of the trip. So he kind of ran out of snacks long before his intended mission was over, because the idea was he would get out and then reset the experiments so we can repeat them. A second design flaw is the cockpit is embedded into the hull and the little hatch is also blocked, so he couldn't even get out if I didn't forget, or rather moved the cryopod away from the reactor. I think that's why the temperature was high. That's the only way I could think of why the temperature would be above 300 degrees, which is surprisingly hot, unless that's Fahrenheit. I don't know. I think it's degrees Celsius. As soon as we get anywhere near Duna's atmosphere, the fuel tanks will start refueling. It worked a lot better than I first thought it would. I think I might have been able to get away with only 2 air intakes and only 1 refrigeration unit on the spaceplane. Yes, that's what it's called. Anyway. So as you will see, I was coming in a little bit fast with the spaceplane towards the Duna research station. What I wanted to do is just flip out the Kerbals, because at this point I still didn't know that the Kerbals couldn't get out. But I came in a tad fast and broke half of everything. There goes the solar panels, and at some point all the radiators explode as well. I thought we would have some issues, but since it spent most of its time in Duna's atmosphere, it still has like 8 air radiators. Those are the ones just in front of the tail fins. And that actually seemed to be more than enough to deal with the heat buildup from the antimatter reactor. Plus, I could always just turn it off in orbit if I wasn't throttling. But yeah, I end up managing to actually properly dock and then flip out the Kerbals. But that was also in vain, as the command pod was placed wrong and the hatch was obstructed. Okay, and now it is time for a time-lapse of the great space plane landing on every single biome of Duna, gathering as much science as possible, and pretty much depleting Duna of all available science except for some Science Junior, I think, and surface samples, as the Kerbal couldn't get out of the cockpit. So as Shipfrid descends into the Kerbal atmosphere and is going to die, because I know it's going to happen, in post-editing, I would like to thank everyone for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Goodbye. Oh, and we managed to make 24,000 science from that Juno mission.